Hi all, I am Vishwanath Amiraju. Today we are here to learn how one can integrate ELK stack with Springboot application for log aggregation and monitoring. Springboot provides a default logging framework, Springboot starter logging, which uses logback as an implementation. Instead of default logging, we will be using Log4j2. The main difference between Springboot logging and the Log4j2 is the underlying logging framework. Log4j2 is part of Log4j2 module. One of the advantages of using Log4j2 module as it uses an implementation of Log4j2 and it is known for its performance improvements. Also, we will be introducing ELK. ELK is a collection of three open source applications. One is Elasticsearch and another one is Logstash and third one is Kibana. Elasticsearch mainly used for storing the data and indexing the data. It has no SQL database based on Lucian open source search engine. Since Elasticsearch is developed using Java, therefore it can run on different platforms. One particular aspect where it excels is indexing string of data such as logs. The other module that we have is Logstash. Logstash is a tool that integrates with variety of deployments. It is used to collect, parse, transform, buffer data from variety of sources. The data collected by Logstash can be shipped to one of the other targets like Elasticsearch. The third component in ELK stack is Kibana. Kibana acts as an analytics and visualization layer on top of Elasticsearch. Kibana can be used to search, view, and interpret the data stored in Elasticsearch. Log monitoring. What is log monitoring? Application log monitoring refers to a process of actively monitoring and analyzing log files generated by application. It involves collecting, parsing, analyzing of log data to gain insights in the application behavior, performance, and potential issues. Why is it important? It is important because of four prime reasons. The first reason is troubleshooting. Log monitoring helps to identify and diagnose issues such as errors, exceptions, performance bottlenecks, and helps in assisting in troubleshooting and resolving them quickly. Second point, performance optimization. By analyzing logs, one can identify the areas of performance improvement, optimize resource usage, and enhance overall efficiency of an application. Third point, most important point, is security. Log monitoring can help to detect security breaches or suspicious activity by analyzing a pattern or anomalies in the logging data. Fourth one is compliance. Many industries have a regular requirement for log management and monitoring, making it crucial for organizations to implement log monitoring to implement compliance standards. There are various tools available in market such as Dynatrace, Greylog, and Logi. Let's take a deep look at our architecture. We will be using Springboot application which runs on JDK 17, uses Maven 3.8.3, and as I said earlier, it will be using instead of logging module, it will be using Log4j2, and hence we use various appenders like socket appender, log file appender, and console appender. In this example, the socket appender which runs on TCP port will be connected to the Logstash. Logstash is a pipeline which will have like inputs, filters, and outputs. So the output of a Logstash will be connected to the Elasticsearch module, and the data is saved in the Elasticsearch, and in order to visualize the data we'll be using the Kibana. So all the installation of Logstash, Elasticsearch, and Kibana, we are not going to install it. Instead, we are going to use a Docker file where we are going to host all these modules in the Docker, and the version of the Docker that I'll be using is 24.0.2. As part of This video I am not going to cover the installation of Docker desktop or installation of Docker plugin in an IDE. As these were already done in the previous videos, I am skipping the installation of Docker desktop and Docker IDE. Without any delay, let's get started. Let's open the browser and let's look for the starter.spring.io. So the configuration that I'll be interested is Maven, project Maven, and language as Java, and Springboot is 3.1.3. At the time of recording, this is the latest. And instead of demo, I'll be mentioning the group ID to be com.vis, and instead of demo, I'll be saying as a template. And then I'll be using the packaging as a jar file, and Java 17 because that is a LTS version, and the dependencies that I'll be interested is a Spring Web, and the other dependencies is the Lambok. These are the two dependencies that I'll be interested in. And now I'll click on generate file. This on generation, it creates a folder in my desktop, and I'll import that in my IntelliJ IDE. I have imported the folder in IntelliJ, and the pond.xml of that is like this, because we have only two dependencies. One is the starter web and another is a Lambok. So inside this starter web, if we go inside this one, then we will be seeing like various dependencies. One among them is the Springboot starter. If we inside go into the Springboot starter, then we will be seeing various dependencies, and one of the dependencies that we come across is the is basically Springboot starter login. So instead of using the starter login, I am interested to use a different one. How do I do that? Is basically I copy paste the module, and what I'll be saying is I want to exclude this particular starter login from a starter. The module that I have copied from is basically from the Springboot starter. So I'll copy this. I still need the Springboot starter, but I don't want the following dependencies. So what I will be saying is all I want to exclude it. So we have a tab called as an exclusion. So the moment I include this particular tag, all I need to mention what is the dependency what is the group ID and artifact ID that I need to exclude it. So this is what I want to exclude it from the list of exclusions. So I have my list of exclusions with my exclusion tag, and then I'm trying to exclude this particular thing from it. So, and what I'm interested to include is a Log4j module. The way how I'm going to use the Log4j plugin to be included is basically adding its dependency. Again, Log4j comes with the Springboot starter module. So instead of login, I'll be using as a Log4j. So I'll copy one of the dependencies, and I'll be mentioning that instead of Springboot starter logging, all I want to include is the Log4j dependencies. Log4j2. So this is the module that I'm interested to include. And there is one more thing as part of testing that I want to include. Basically whenever we are working with the test modules in this exercise, I'm not going to write any test cases, but ideally whenever you are trying to include it, we use this annotation run with annotation where this annotation ideally comes from the JUnit, which needs to be added to the Spring dependency. So if I add it, the other way of adding to pom.xml is by searching the dependencies and adding it. So the moment it adds it, all we want to import the unit. So if I go back to the pom.xml again, you can see the dependency has now been added. I have noticed that there is a compilation issue because of this, and we will be fixing that in a minute by importing the class, and it has been fixed. Now what we will be doing is we'll be creating a class named as an user for this, and we create that as a user class. And inside this class, what I'll be interested is to annotate that class using the Langbook expressions, and because I'll be using the builder pattern, I will also be using the noargs constructor, and as well as the other constructor, which is all args constructor. So, and I'll be interested to import all the classes associated to it, all the import statements associated to it. So now in terms of the fields, what I'll be interested in creating like a field called as an ID, and another field of string type, and I'll be making it as a name, and another one which will be local date time, and I'll be taking as date of birth with that time, date of, so birth details. So probably I'll say as a birth details. So, and I'll be importing the class for this, and I will also be, I can move that to the different package where I can create as a package, and I can say as a name of the that package. I can make it as a domain, and all I'll be moving this to that domain where I can do the refactor. Likewise, I'll be creating one more package where I'll be saying the package name to be a controller, and I'll be creating a class called user controller. So, and what I'll be doing is in terms of this controller, because it is a REST controller, I'm just going to say as a REST controller and import it, and because we are interested in going for the logs, so SFL4J is the one that I'll be interested in importing it, and I'll be writing a small code where it is basically the get mapping of it. Sorry, caps is on. Get mapping of it, and I'll be importing this as well, and the URI is basically it will use users slash and I'll be interested to pass the ID. So whenever we access it, it is a localhost port colon 8080 slash user slash ID, and the method that I'm interested is basically to have it to be as a response entity. Basically I can make it as a class type, but for now I'll be interested to make it as a enter where I'm trying to find user by ID. So and I can again use like string params, or I can directly say as a path variable. Path variable path variable. That is a small mistake, and I'm going to import that class, and also I'm going to import this this one, response entity, and again there is a mistake, response entity, so I have imported it, both the classes. Now what I will be writing is, because it is a string ID, I need to handle both, like positive scenario and also the negative scenario. So what I will be doing is, I'll say as long ID, and in order to handle the negative scenario, I'm going with the try-catch block, where I'm going to say as, because the ID is already there, what I will say as a user ID. I'll try to use that user ID field equal to long bars, because I'm going to take it from ID. So this is the conversion that I'm interested in. And if there are any exceptions, which is basically the number formatter exception that I can see in terms of a converting, what I'll be saying is string message, where I'll be interested is string dot formatter, and I'm going to use that the invalid command, invalid user ID. I'll be mentioning it, where I'll be mentioning like my formatter, saying like what is an ID that user has entered, and also I'll be leaving a message saying like please enter a valid numeric value. So where I have a parameter, so I'll be saying as a parameter as a D, and that is what the user ID is. User ID is, and now what I will be interested is, I am interested to log this message, whatever the message that I have got, and in terms of returning it, I'll be mentioning as a response entity, because and I'll be saying it is a bad request, and I'll be building the body, and I'll be mentioning what that body should have as, because the message is already there. I'll be interested to pass this back to the user, so that the user is going to see that bad request is a method. I'm trying to reuse that method, and assuming that the ID is right, all I want to print that request ID, request with the ID. So where I'll be using a different formatter, different formatter than using like a string dot formatter, and also I'll be saying like this is my user ID. Yeah. So I'm logging my user ID in the info page. What I will be doing is, I'll be creating an object of the user, where I'll be invoking via constructor. That was the reason I have that particular annotation. Let me import this class first. So user from domain class, where I'll be passing the values as a user ID, and also I'll be passing the values as name appended with my user ID. user ID, and also I'll be saying as a local date time, local date time, where I'll be taking the current value of it, and I'll be again I have imported this particular class, and what I will be doing is again I'll be mentioning like data retrieved, data retrieve. Currently I'm not saving it in database, but assuming that the data is saved in the database, this is the message that we want to display. And again, if the data is shown, then we'll be saying like a response, and this time because the response is right, we will be saying as we'll be sharing what is the value back to the user. We'll be sharing the user object back to the user. So this is a simple REST controller where we are not connected to the database, but in general, because the primary objective of this is to display generate the messages, and so that these messages are captured and it would be integrated with the ELK module. So now the changes what we will be interested to do is we will make a few changes in let us say we will go back to this application.properties, and we will make a few changes where I'll be saying like spring dot application name, where I'll be saying as instead of saying as a template, it doesn't look good, so I'll be saying as a Springboot ELK ELK demo. So that's my app name that would be displayed. And also I'm trying to say my port is going to be 8080. If you want a different port, yeah, feel free to mention it. And on pom.xml, as you have seen, like we have integrated the logging with log4j2. Now what I will be creating is the associated property file. Instead of properties, I'll be interested to create as a XML. So I'll mention the file name is log4j2.xml. So inside this file, now what I'll be interested is to generate the configuration. Because it's an XML, I'll be mentioning like the XML version. The version that I'm interested is basically 1.0, the first version of it. And also what I'll be saying is an encoding. I'm interested with the default UTF encoding 8 characters, and the configuration that I am interested is basically to mention what the details are. So I'll be saying as I have a status where I'll say I'll give it as a 1. So that I get all the details, and I'm going to restrict this to true. And also monitoring interval, I'll just mention to be 30. So I'll just mention as a 30. So this is the configuration over which this configuration I'll be mentioning like two more child items. One is the properties, and other is an appender. And now we will be seeing like how we can do it. The first one is the properties. So I'll just close this property tag, and inside the properties we have various properties. We can declare various various properties as a property tag, and we will be naming the name of it where I'll be saying as a file name. This particular property, because in the diagram that I have showed earlier, I have mentioned like I can write the data to my log file, log data to a file where I'm going to say as a Springboot. The file name can be anything. Springboot ELK demo .config or .log is my property. What I will be doing is I'll be interested to create another property, and I'll be saying as this how my data has to go, or probably as a default pattern. Default pattern, and I'll be mentioning like how my pattern should be. Over here I can mention my log date inside this log date. I'll be mentioning as it will be basically it will be taking as a percentile D and I'll be interested to capture the ISO standards. And the other thing that I'll be interested is the thread, whatever the thread details, like in case if you're working on a multi-thread application, you can if you're interested to capture the thread details, you can just put the format of the values over here, and the level of logs that you want to capture, which says as a level. And the other things that I'm interested is the logging class itself. What is my logging class, sorry, the logger class details. So this is the pattern that I'm interested to see in my application, like so I'll be saying as my logger. And because when it logs, the value of the class will be positioned in terms of an array. I'm just trying to pick that array position when it is 36. I understand that it picks the value of my class. Likewise, the message that it wanted to print. So where I'll be saying as a percentage MSG, the actual message along with that. And I'm also interested to capture the very next line of it. So this is the pattern that I want it to take as and once it takes the pattern, what I'll be interested is I'll be mentioning like the filters, like whatever is the filters along with the properties. This is to basically this will have like a threshold filter, what I'm actually looking for, and I'll be mentioning like my level, what is and I'm interested to create everything, and so that is a reason I'm trying to say like my threshold. Again, I missed R over here, so threshold is going to be my trace. And over here, as you have seen in the diagram, I have various appenders where I'll be saying like what my appenders are. I'll initially be saying like my appenders, and inside that I have my various appenders where I'll be specifying my appender name. For example, the standard output appender, where I see my type to be console, whatever you see it in the console. And within that we can also because we have mentioned like the layout, whatever the layout that we have mentioned, where we have already declared the pattern above. So the default pattern, we can use our pattern, the default pattern to be. So and also we can mention like the type is pattern layout. And the pattern that we are interested to create, because we have already declared it. I'm trying to refer it by using like a dollar sign. So the pattern that I'm going to refer is this. This is the pattern that I want it to be printed as. So this is for my standard out appender. Likewise, I am interested in creating two more appenders. One is the file type, where the name as well, I'll be giving it as a file. Name and type is a file, and the file name, because it's a file type, all I need to give is the file name. And the file name that I am interested is because I have already mentioned the file name above. I'll be reusing that file name, where I'll be mentioning this is the file that I'm interested to transfer the data to. And again, the pattern layout, everything remains same. The third type of appender that I'm interested is the socket appender. Basically, when we are trying to say as a socket, so socket appender, we will be mentioning like two more details: what is the host and what is the port, and also what is the time at which it has to travel as so the host in this case will be my log stash, and the port of the log stash. And the other property that I am interested is like reconnection delay, in case if it has failed, after how many milliseconds like it has to reconnect. Over here, I wanted to reconnect for 5000 milliseconds. And in terms of the host, because we are going to use like ELK stack, I want my log stash to connect, and the port to which it has to connect is let us say like 999. These are my appenders, but in terms of this is not going to be an appender. This is going to be my socket details, where I have provided my socket information. So the first two are the appenders. One is a file appender, and second one is a console one, and third one is a socket connection, where I'm going to connect to the log stash on a port of 999. This is one of the configuration file that is required to see the logs in a pattern that we have mentioned above. And moving on, now we will be creating because we need to integrate with the ELK. What I'll be doing is I'll quickly be creating folders within my class, where I'll be saying as directories, and I'll say as an ELK is my directory. And within this ELK, I'll be creating like three more directories, where I'll be saying as Elasticsearch, Elasticsearch, and within this I'm going to have another directory which is related to Kibana, and another directory which is related to Logstash. So these are the three directories that I have. So generally you can run the project by downloading the versions, but it would be better if we have Docker files where we can say like what has to be taken from. Basically for this particular Docker file, we are interested in getting the version of Elasticsearch Elasticsearch details from Elasticsearch website, which is nothing but elastic.co, and Elasticsearch is one that we are interested in. The image name is Elasticsearch, and also we are interested to take the version as 8.9.0. Is one of my Docker files. I will just copy paste the same thing, but definitely I'm going to add the details, right details for Kibana and the other things. Instead of the only change that is required is, instead of Elasticsearch, it is going to be for Kibana. It is going to be Kibana, and whereas for the logstash, again the Docker file is going to be a logstash. I recommend you to use the same versions. If there is a higher version is released, then you use the same consistent same version details for all the three files, so that compatibility issues, if any, are addressed in first place. Else you might end up with the compilation issues. So these are the three Docker files, and one more Docker file that I'll be interested to create is for my application itself, where I'll be saying as a new Docker file. Yeah, where within this Docker file, what I'll be interested to do is I'll be mentioning the build part. And for build, as I mentioned, like we are using 3.8.3 Maven version, and also I'm interested to pull like open JDK version 17 for build, as build. So this is basically used for building. What the next one, what I'm interested is to make a directory as a parent directory, and the name of the directory that I want to make it as a workspace. And again, once this work directory is there, within this work directory, whatever is there in from my machine, the same thing has to be copied to my workspace directory that I have mentioned. So also I'll be mentioning like to copy the details of pom.xml pom.xml to my workspace directory. Also, I'm interested to copy the source, my source from the current directory to the Docker workspace directory of source. And in order to build it, obviously I want to run the Maven command, where I'll be saying as pick the details from the pom.xml, and you clean it and package it. So this is the package. This is entirely the build part. And once it comes for the like execution part, I'm again trying to say like because I'm the JDK 17 version, I'll be using open JDK JDK, where I'll be taking the image name as JDK, where I'll be using it from Slimbusters. And what I'll be doing is, whatever the build has happened, it has to copy from those build details to my workspace thing, where I'll be target, because all the details goes into the target. I'm trying to say like whatever the jar name that it is going to create, I'm going to rename my jar as a app jar. So that when I expose my port, when I expose my port, I'm just saying like expose my port 8080 on it. And for an entry point, because it's a Java application, I'll be mentioning it as a Java. And I know it is going to be a jar file that is going to be created, and the name of the jar file mentioned in line 9 is an app jar, so I'll be mentioning as an app jar over here. So this is my Docker file. So we have 3 sets of Docker file. In order to run all those things, what we need is to create a new file where I'll be saying as a Docker Compose file, which is a combination of all these things, and I'll be naming it as a Docker Compose .yaml. So this is my docker compose.yaml, and inside this docker compose I'll be mentioning like various things. The first one is the version of it, and again, like when we are working on this, we have to be very careful with the spaces. If something is wrong, like generally it won't work. And we have various services inside it. So I'm just going to say like the first service that I have is an Elasticsearch that I have. And in terms of building this Elasticsearch, I wanted to refer from the module that I have created as an ELK Elasticsearch. So it picks from there, and I want the container name and I want the container name to be as Elasticsearch. And if there are any issues, it is always better we say like sorry, the caps is on. It is always better to say like what is the restart value that it want to be. I instead of true, I'll mention as an always. And the ports, Elasticsearch runs on various ports. The ports that I am interested is to run basically on port on 9200, and I want to again expose that 9200 as well. And the other port is 9300, and again I'm going to expose like a 9300 port. And in addition to this details, I can also mention the environment properties, where I can mention saying like what is the details of the environmental environment variables that it is going to take. So in this case, the details of monitoring XPack monitoring, this is basically the naming convention. You can just mention like whether it has to be enabled or not. In my case, like I'm saying as an not enabled. Likewise, the XPack, if I want to say like the security is going to be enabled, I'm not enable my security. In real production case, like you would like to enable it, but because I'm trying to run it in my local machine, all I'm trying to say like at this point of time I'm not going to enable it. Likewise, the Java runtime options, what we can say is like what is the minimum or maximum maximum memory allocation that you can give, as well as what is the minimum memory that it can take as. So both I'm trying to say as both minimum and minimum is represented as MS, the minimum memory, and the maximum memory is going to be taking as a single point. And in terms of the other settings that I have is basically to ensure what is the discovery mode, like so basically I can say like discovery type is going to be single node. In production, again, you can have like multi-node concepts where you can say like master, slavery, slave mode, and in terms of the other property that we are interested in is we are interested to build the network, and we will be saying like default network is 0.0.0.0. That is a default network in which all the services that I'm going to create is going to have as. So for each service, now probably I can copy paste it because now I have created for Elasticsearch. What I'll be doing is I'll be creating the same for Kibana. And the Kibana build, if you see it, the Kibana build is from ELK Kibana folder, and the container name that I want to have it as a Kibana, and the restart is going to be the same, and I want to persist the value. So the configuration for example, when you want to persist it, you go for a volumes, where I'm trying to include like one of the volumes over here, and I'm going to say let it pick from the current directory of my ELK stack, where I have mentioned my Kibana configuration. I'm going to create my Kibana configuration, and I'm going to mention like the folder that I wanted to write is going to be Kibana config slash. So this is so now let's create the config file for Kibana, else we might forget. So let's quickly go to the Kibana, and let's create a folder called as new directory called as config. As mentioned in this, we are going to create a config file, and the config file for this is going to be a file where we will mention it to be sorry, I have created it in Logstash. Anyway, even for Logstash we will be doing the same. So over here we'll be creating a directory as config, and inside this, the config file that we want to create is Kibana YAML file, where I'll be saying as kibana.yaml, and for Logstash, instead of YAML, I'll be creating Logstash as a config, so that you can create any file format, but I want to take up an example with multiple config files, one in YAML, one in property file, one in config, so that we we can see how we can integrate those things. So the first one, when we go to the YAML configuration, the configuration over here is going to be very simple. So we are going to mention like server.port, what we have already mentioned in property files, where we know the Kibana is going to be exposed on this, and the other one where we have like a server.host, the host at which it is going to be, like hosted, where we will be mentioning as 0.0.0, and the elastic, basically we have Elasticsearch host, because it has to connect to the Elasticsearch host. We are again going to mention the URL of Elasticsearch host, HTTP, where I am going to say as an Elasticsearch, and the port at which we have defined the Elasticsearch to execute is 9202. And let's quickly go to the other config file, which is Logstash. As you have seen, for the Logstash, we are going to have like a set of fields. One is input, and another is filter, and another is output. In case if you want to transform the data, then you can write something in a filter. For now, like I'm not having any data. I'm going to have the same data whatever I'm going to get, and that data, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to send that to my Elasticsearch as it is. So all I'm trying to mention is like what is the value of my Elasticsearch, where it is going to run. So we have mentioned like our Elasticsearch is going to run on this port. So that means like this output should be taken care by my Elasticsearch. Likewise, in terms of an input, if we see in our log4 XML file, where we have created under resources, we have mentioned like we have a socket communication for Logstash. So this input, where we are going to use, is basically in the input we will be saying like the communication that we have is going to be the TCP connection, where we are going to mention, instead of tab, I'll just give the space so that it is easy. So likewise, I'll just give a space where I'll be having as a port, the port that I have given is the 999 over there, and every line that I want it to be printed. So I'll just say like quotes is a line, so that it captures every line. So this is my configuration for Logstash, and this is my configuration for my Kibana. So let's move on to our Docker Compose file, where we are trying to mention the details for Kibana. So if I go back to my Docker Compose file, we because we have created this config folder, all we are trying to say is execute that config folder, and also we need to mention the ports, as we have declared the port is to run as 5601, the same port that I'm trying to mention. And over here I'm not mentioning like the environmental variables. Instead, I'll just mention like it depends on let this module, you start this module once you start my Elasticsearch. So basically depends on is the thing that helps you to give you list the details of it, where I'm going to say as Elasticsearch, or maybe I can just copy paste it. So unless my Elasticsearch module is not up, I'm trying to say is not to run it. Likewise, I'm going to have another one. This time I'm going to have my Logstash. So basically, I'll just say as Logstash stash. So I'm going to paste my Logstash, my build. In order to build the Logstash, all I'm trying to say is pick the details of Logstash from Logstash, and the container name to be Logstash, and restart always. And this time I'll be including before it comes to the volumes, I'll be saying like the command. If I want to include any commands, I can have a property called as a command. So inside the command, I'll be saying like what is a command that I want it to be executed. The command that I want it to be executed is to run the config file, whatever I have created for this Logstash 1, and when it is running this config, I want it to run in the detached mode. That is what mentioned. And the last one, the last service that my Docker file should hold is basically related to my app. So I'll be mentioning as my Springboot app, where the build should takes place in the current location, and I want it to restart always restart start. I wanted to restart always, and also the ports that I have created for it is basically to run on port 8080, and I want the same port to be exposed as 8080. So yeah, and also in terms of depends upon, I can just say like because there is no point in starting this application if my Logstash is not ready. So I'll just say like it depends upon Logstash. So copy and then I paste Logstash. So this is my Docker Compose file, and now we have everything. We have like ELK files that will be imported from Docker files, and the configuration is mentioned, and we have like our application changes, and we have all these things. And let me run my Docker Compose. And before that, what we have to do is we have to install our Docker desktop. If Docker desktop is not installed, then I recommend you to install it. And also as I mentioned, like I was having various plugins in my IDE, and one of the plugins is related to the Docker. So those are the prerequisites to run. If it is not been configured in your machine, those two are to be configured. Yeah, so let's run this module. Yeah, we have encountered an exception, and the reason is the placement of this Docker files and Docker Compose. So it should be on the parent directory. So I'm refactoring it. When we refactor it, what we have to also see is basically the Docker Compose file, how it is going to change. I just want it to be as current directory, and I want it to be always on, and also this details. Let me rerun the services. So Kibana app data app, yeah, it has now come to the app where it is trying to build the app, clean the app, and packaging the app. That is what it is happening now. Once the packaging is done, then it will be building the app, and things will be ready. So meanwhile we can see the images. If it has built the other images, yeah, it has built the Elasticsearch image, Kibana image, and Logstash image, and the other image that we are anticipating to build is the application. Yeah, it has started, and you can see like all the images are up and running. This is our app. Yeah, as you see, all the containers are up. What I have not convinced is with the convention of this. So I'll be quickly stopping this containers, and I'll be renaming them as this. So I'll be refactoring the current directory from template to ELK. Likewise, I'll be refactoring this to ELK. So and because there is no template directory, I'm just deleting it. So we deploying the changes using the Docker Compose file, and let's see the changes. So over here we can again see that all the 4 containers has a start. I would like to be interested to see this Spring application has started or not. So sometimes what happens is because we have a dependency, the other modules are started, and Spring sometimes may not start. So I'll be keying my data. Let us say like for 11, yeah, I got the data, and for 12 I got the data. Now what I will be doing is I'll be using like Kibana. If your application is not up, then it will not reflect in the Kibana. So what I wanted to do is create a data view. For in order to create a data view, what I'll be using is an existing one. You can either create a dashboard, or you can directly use it without saving it, because it's a demonstration. I'm just trying to use it as it is. And over here you can see like this is the document object, and we are not able to see the actual message. So I'm just trying to create the actual message. So if I go over here, and if I say as 12a, then I should immediately see when I refresh my board, then I should see like the exception. Likewise, if I'm going to say like a valid test case for this, and if I refresh it, yeah, again I have seen the data over here. In this way, now we are able to streamline the data from application. And thank you for watching.